Welcome to Unite and Win, a guide to workplace organizing, a podcast series by the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, presented in partnership with Haymarket Books. My name's Kim Kelly. Some of you may know me as Grim Kim online. I'm a labor journalist, lifelong metalhead, Philadelphia partisan, and author of 2 books on labor: Fight Like Hell, The Untold History of American Labor, and Fight to Win, Heroes of American Labor, the Young Readers Edition. Lately, I've been having some great conversations with labor organizers about their own experiences fighting like hell to organize their workplaces across industries, from education and media to fast food and nursing. These conversations are based on EWOC's Unite and Win handbook, which you heard our buddy Wes narrate. They're our way of digging into these lessons with real-world examples that help to illustrate just how much a union can help us accomplish when we come together and fight. Power in numbers is the theme of today's episode. Our guests, Reckers and Phoebe Gilpin, are here to take us through the ins and outs of planning a successful collective action. To get things started, I would love for each of you to introduce yourselves, and I will call on Phoebe first.
I'm Phoebe Gilpin. I use she and they pronouns, and I previously was the Senior Director of Formal Learning at Sesame Workshop, and I now am a professor at Borough of Manhattan Community College in Manhattan.
My name is Grace Reckers. I use she and her pronouns. I am a senior organizer at the Office of Professional Employees International Union, or OPEIU, which does represent the Sesame Workers Union, conveniently.
Yeah, seems like that worked out pretty well. Which we will get to. But first, what is y'all's involvement with or experience with EWOC?
So my partner is currently a negotiator, but has worked in the labor movement for a long time in various roles. And he also volunteers for EWOC. And he also is a volunteer on our campaign. He was actually really critical in not only setting up our initial strategy and helping us do things like get a list of all of our coworkers together and start to map our relationships, but also when it was time to go public, he used a lot of his connections, both in the labor world and just in the New York City politics world, to really garner support from the outside.
Yeah. And I've been a staff organizer for the last 7, going on 8 years with OPEIU. And during the pandemic, myself, like many others, were inundated with a lot of organizing requests, but also a lot of just concern over the state of the labor movement and the state of what workers were facing nationwide. And there were a number of campaigns that we were taking on as OPEIU that we didn't necessarily have the capacity for, or we saw that there are some immediate emergency, one might say, workplace issues that people needed support on. I have a lot of campaigns that I work on in my day-to-day job as a union organizer. So being able to just plug into some of the EWOC trainings has been fun for me because I love to be able to train on the fundamentals, and also allows me to work with workers who are excited to actually jumpstart campaigns on their own.
So I know where you two have ended up, at least so far, but I want to know how you ended up getting interested in labor and in organizing and all of this. Phoebe, what's your origin story?
So I was a teacher for a very long time in California, and I was a member of a union as a public school teacher. Shout out to OEA. And I got involved. I got to be a delegate. I got to see what the national stage looks like for NEA. And then when I moved to New York, my teaching credential didn't transfer exactly the way that I expected it to. So I ended up transitioning to working in the nonprofit sector. And later on, that's how I ended up working at Sesame, working in the education nonprofit sector. And I think that one of the things that I really learned about being a teacher is that when you have a union, it just feels different to go to work every day. There is a level of confidence and security. Like, I could look up 10 years from now, how much money am I going to make when I work here? I knew what my health benefits were going to be for forever. And that set the stage for, I think, doing better work. And working at Sesame Workshop is a really incredible place in so many ways. And we saw the ways that having a union there would really support us even more. And that was really how we ended up forming the union there. Was like every union, it starts with people talking to each other and having one-to-one conversations. And that's the origin there.
Grace, how about you?
I got involved initially through a worker center that I was interning at throughout college. So it was actually thanks to a professor of mine who connected me with this worker center in LA. That's the Koreatown Immigrant Workers Alliance. At the time, there was a big push for immigrant organizing in LA around DACA. So it was initially under Obama. So a lot of my work at the worker center was around door knocking around whatever issue. It could be around lead poisoning. It could be around DACA signups and protections. It could be around wage theft. And I got more interested in seeing how we could actually move workers around issues that affect people in and outside of the workplace. So I spent one summer working at 32BJ in Boston, and it was the summer after Trump got elected for the first time. So the big push was for sanctuary cities. And it was the most transformative summer for me because I feel like I got like a very challenging, but a very like idealistic view of what the labor movement can actually do. Because my whole job that summer was to actually go and meet with workers face to face outside their workplaces, at their homes, in coffee shops, and talk with them about their experiences, not only as a janitor or security guard, but also as someone who felt threatened by ICE and who needed stronger protections, and to talk about what a union could actually do to get involved in that fight. And it was like what I would love to imagine the labor movement could actually continue to take on. And I think we're making strides. I then spent a summer with the New York State Nurses Association just for an internship, and then got a job at OPEIU, which at the time was starting to take on more of an organizing model. And that was very new. I was very green. I was 22. And I was like, here I am as a staff organizer. And they hadn't hired staff organizers for a while before that. And they certainly hadn't hired anyone below the age of 45 maybe before that. And so I've been there ever since.
Man, I love hearing stories like that because when I was 22, I was not trying to organize a union. I was not thinking about that kind of thing at all. I was 22. I think I was living in my friend's closet in between going on tour with different heavy metal bands.
Radicalizing on its own.
You know, at the very least, I got like a base level of brute strength from lifting amplifiers all the time that hopefully will keep me going as I get old. But we've danced around it a little bit. I want to talk about Sesame Street. What brought you all together and what made you all organize? And Phoebe, I'm gonna drill down on you because I want to hear about that origin story, about what was the impetus for you and your coworkers to be like, all right, letter U time. Like we gotta get this going.
So when people hear the word Sesame Workshop, they think of Sesame Street. So Sesame Street, the show, it's been on forever. All of us grew up on it. Our parents grew up on it. If you didn't grow up on it personally, it's still in the world. You've seen these characters. They make you feel warm and fuzzy. You feel connected to them. They're so funny. There's this feeling of belonging that a lot of people experience when they watch Sesame Street. And the imagination of Sesame Street is aspirational. It's a multiracial neighborhood. It's a safe urban area. Everyone's looking out for each other. And the challenges that you see are very surmountable on Sesame Street. Like if a challenge arises, the community comes together and they solve this issue. So in one way, Sesame Street, there's a question to why wasn't this already done? Only 55 years after the founding of Sesame Street, why is it now that we're doing this work? So there are a lot of different branches to the organization beyond the broadcast that everyone knows. And so that'll require staff to facilitate all these programs, to do legal for them, to do research, to make sure that the show's actually doing the thing it says it is, and so is all of our other content. All that is to say that this is the group that we focused on. So there's WGA writers who write for the show, yes. There's IATSE members who work on the show when they're at Kaufman Studios, yes, right? So there's this component of unionism already being, in some ways, present at Sesame. However, that was not the experience of the workers who worked in the office at 1900 Broadway. There's a tiered system like many organizations have. You can be a 1, that's an intern, up to a 7, which is a senior director. And then beyond that, there's like a 9 is a VP or something like that, all the way up to, I guess, the CEO is like 100. So there are a number of inequities that come with that stratification. So if you're a 6 or 7, it makes you eligible for a bonus every year. The first year when I got a bonus, I could not believe my eyes. It was, I want to say 15 or 20% of my salary coming to me in one check.
Ooh.
And I never had that before, right? I've been a teacher, worked in the nonprofit world. I couldn't understand how they could afford this when I also knew colleagues who were struggling to pay their bills. And that's not to say that, oh, these, 6 and 7 workers, they're spoiled or they have it too good. It's more to say that there was a stark and intentional difference. So I was a 7. I never worked on budgets. I never had a direct report. Whereas there are people who are 5s who manage entire teams, who are in charge of, approving budgets and making sure things get done the way they should be. So that was one of the key inequities. Why is it that some people are getting 20% and some people are getting 1%? They're getting one extra paycheck, maybe, on a good year. That didn't make sense. What I just described, this 1 through 7 structure, that only applies to people that are hired as staff. Sesame also has 2 other classifications of employee, W-2 employee, variable hour employees and cast and crew. They don't get those benefits. I know someone who worked there 31 years on short-term contracts.
Oh, that's such a classic ripoff move.
It's a classic, cheapskate ripoff. Our mission is to help children everywhere grow smarter, stronger, and kinder, but your children don't have healthcare. That's the kind of business that's being run. And I think that relationally, people love each other at Sesame Workshop. People really care about each other. The bosses really care about their workers, right? So it's hard to want to engage in conflict, but it also is just a reality that the workshop is centered in New York City, and we are required to go to the office. And if these things are true, then we should be paying people enough to live on a street like Sesame Street.
Yeah, I mean, from what I remember, it's been a couple of years, but, I learned watching Sesame Street, be nice to everybody. Everyone's equal. Everyone deserves to have a nice time. And Phoebe, I wanted to pick up on something you mentioned, this idea of the folks working at Sesame, we care about each other. We care about our jobs. We don't necessarily want to rock the boat. We just want things to be fair, want things to be a little bit better. And I think that's a sentiment. Well, I know that's a sentiment that we hear across so many different industries. We heard that back at Vice when I was helping to organize there. I feel like almost every person I've talked to for this podcast has had that thrown at them in various ways throughout the organizing process. But escalation, putting pressure on the employer, getting that point where you have to go public, you have to turn the screws a little bit, that can be a little challenging in those environments where folks are a little more reticent to be boom, let's go bust some kneecaps. Not everyone is necessarily interested in jumping to that first. So what were those escalations looking like at Sesame? And who are the kind of targets you were thinking about? And when did you decide, all right, now we're going to push a little further. Now we're going to push a little further than that?
So in February of 2025, we were preparing to go public with our union. Our target was the CEO, and we also wanted the public to be aware, especially as there was sort of this narrative that you need to save Sesame Street. Federal funding was the reason why for that. Federal funding was a tiny slice, less than, I want to say 10%, but I think it's even lower than that. I think it's 5%, 4% of the operating budget for Sesame Workshop.
Oh, wow.
So the narrative that we were under threat because of that is constructed. And the company was using that as justification for laying off a third of workers. And in February, we sort of knew layoffs were coming. There's vibes and discussion. And we figured out, based on how the calendar was moving around, when the all staff was, how that was changing places, oh, they're going to announce on March 4th, it looks like, is when they're going to announce these layoffs. And we were close with our union. We already had the support we needed. We hadn't really done cards, though. So in 10 days, we turned around cards. That was our first move because we wanted to beat them before layoffs to go public with our union so that if anything else, it'll slow the machine. We wanted to hopefully get them to reconsider layoffs because that would be a change to working conditions, which would be an unfair labor practice. So we went public with our union on March 3rd. And the strategy that we chose to go with was brilliantly designed by people who are not me. And I want to shout out to Melissa Chaco, who's also working with EWOC. She was really foundational in us thinking about, like you said, Kim, people are scared to get involved. But we're just living Sesame values. We're not doing anything wrong. We're trying to help the organization better live its mission. So we wrote a really warm letter to the CEO describing what a challenging position she's in and that we're here to help. You don't have to make these difficult decisions by yourself. We want to be a support for you and our organization that we love at this time of deep challenges. We brought her flowers. We bought her a book called Sesame Values that talks about cooperation and sharing and collaboration, right?
That's diabolical.
And the night before, we even had the local 153 Secretary Treasurer, Nick Gallipo. He even called Sherry Weston, the CEO, to tell her all this is happening tomorrow. So you are not blindsided. When we walked, there were over 80 people who walked this letter and our flowers and our book up to Sherry's office. She was not there to receive us. We gave those things to her assistant and we invited them to join us outside. We're going to have a party. So again, rather than having a rally, we threw a block party. We celebrated that we made a union. We already had a union. The union is our relationships with each other. It's all of us. We did it. We made the union. And we had speakers who talked and we had music and there was dancing. Like it was a true celebration in front of Sesame Workshop in a small sliver of a park called Dante Park in the middle of Broadway. We went upstairs from this incredible celebration and learned a third of us are getting laid off. You'll find out tomorrow by email. People who remain, your 401k is not going to be matched the way it has been in the past. We're cutting this. We're changing that. You'll be remote tomorrow to receive the news of if you are continuing to work here or not.
That's so cold.
It was so cold-blooded. And also, like, if you're going to lay me off, do it to my face, you know?
Right.
Like, have some integrity. Stand by your decision. They didn't. And our group chat was coming in with, I'm good, I got the I'm good, and I'm laid off. I'm laid off. I'm laid off. We had 7 speakers at the rally. That day, 6 of us were laid off. And the 7th was laid off 3 months later. So we supported each other. A group of us still showed up to work that day. And we cried together. We hugged together. The value of the union was we did have each other. None of us did it alone. All of us had a community. So the first step into beating them was Sesame wasn't going to do anything to celebrate these people that they laid off. So we threw a party. The organizing committee put together a really celebratory party. We had drinks and we had decorations and we had music and we had a bubble machine and we had speeches and we celebrated each other and we cried together and we had a really important time where we acknowledged each other. And our CEO, who had staunchly said, 40 people can be in your union, came upstairs and was not warmly received. And she looked around at the power in that room and the care that all these people were showing each other. And the next day, we got 100 people in our unit.
Literally killing them with kindness.
Killing them with kindness is a great way to put that.
Unite and Win is presented in partnership with Haymarket Books, publisher of a wide range of essential radical books that are especially relevant to listeners like you. One that you might be interested in reading is Ours to Master and to Own, Workers' Control from the Commune to the Present, edited by Dayer Azlimi and Emmanuel Ness. From the dawn of the industrial epoch, wage earners have organized themselves into unions, fought bitter strikes, and gone so far as to challenge the very premises of the system by creating institutions of democratic self-management aimed at controlling production without bosses. Drawing lessons from historical and contemporary struggles for workers' control from every corner of the globe, this book is essential reading for all those struggling to create a new world from the ashes of the old. Find ours to master and to own at haymarketbooks.org, where all paperback books are 20% off every day. Grace, I see you nodding over there. I want to hear all your thoughts about all this.
Yeah, it's been impressive to see this campaign play out over time, especially when you all were not even planning on going public when you did, like when you were forced into a situation. It's always fascinating to see who can actually step up and to know that like sometimes you just need a culminating issue to actually rally around and to get past that finish line. Like there's been so many times when I've worked on campaigns where it'll be 6 months where we'll inch our way along to get between 25 to 30% support, but then like announcements of layoffs comes, or maybe there is a change in the practice, or maybe suddenly people are required to be back in the office 5 days a week, even though they used to work 3 days a week in the office. And suddenly it's like there's a spark and people want to organize and they recognize that they are not actually going to be included in these decisions unless they have a union. And the fact that the group of Sesame workers were able to pull together a party and to bring actually 80 people to a delegation in front of their boss, it doesn't just happen overnight. It's like what I tell people too, even if it requires a culminating circumstance, it only happened because you were already having conversations with your coworkers and you'd built the structure and you had the relationships and you had a committee and people were trained up and they're ready to hit the ground running. Oftentimes when I'm getting workers ready to go public with their faces and with their statements of support and to maybe appear on video and to be publicly supportive, and I show them examples of what other groups have done, we always have to talk about that it takes those hard conversations and it takes time and it takes those relationships that we need to develop and foster. And you all had that in place. And that's why you could actually pull something together when the time was of the essence. But I think in terms of escalation, what we always talk about is there are structure tests along the way. And I think even Phoebe just talking about the party in the park, talking about the event that they planned on the 9th floor, those are forms of structure tests of just if you're able to document how many people actually walked up to the CEO, how many people wore a button, how many people showed up outside of the workplace for the rally or for the party or whatever it is. Because we need to be seeing a growing number of workers participating in each of those actions for us to actually mount the required leverage on the boss to get them to actually negotiate with you, like we saw with Sesame workers. It wasn't until maybe the boss saw that more people were taking part in these actions and more people were actually joining in because of the solidarity and because of the union that they had built, that they were actually able to get one of the wins that they were fighting for. I also think that in terms of escalation, oftentimes it's easy to think more along the lines of like changing your Slack photo or like posting on social media, which is great, like that is some visibility. But I am most interested in seeing ways that we can get people's faces out there and to get their stories being told, and ways that we can actually humanize the work that's being done, whether it's putting on buttons, whether it's signing onto a letter, whether it's a work stoppage and actually going on strike. We have to have the faces of the people who are doing the work as actually publicly supportive and part of that process.
Gosh, speaking of the public support, public faces, every union campaign, we go public, we get support, follow the playbook. But Sesame did it in such a kind of dazzling way. Like your merch store alone, for lack of a less annoying word, the branding of your campaign was really incredible. It really stood out and it tugged at the heartstrings and it got the attention, especially because as soon as you went public, the fans, the big kids who grew up on the work that y'all are doing, found out that the company was laying you off and being mean to you. I feel like people took it really personally. And yeah, I just want to hear a little bit about, I guess, how you crafted the public-facing parts of the campaign. Phoebe, what is your secret? How do we replicate it without having, Elmo in our back pocket like you did?
We did have Elmo in our back pocket, to be fair. Like the brand, here's what we had to do though. The union had to do the brand and be Sesame better than Sesame. So when you're talking about Sesame values, when you're talking about kindness, fairness, who do you think wrote that? It was our staff. We were already the writers of the thing that is being made that goes out to the world. So it was easy for us. And I'll give you an example. Like our social media, that was run by Autumn Sancho. She is an icon. We also have a social media team at Sesame who runs like Elmo's account. We did not have the social media team running our social media, but we did have all of us working together to craft the message. And Autumn really being an arbiter of, that caption, I'm going to add a few words to it and switch it around a little bit to sesamatize it. And that's something we actually say at Sesame, like, let's sesamatize this. So the brand is strong. And then we have brand creative on our side. So when it came time to make our t-shirts, they helped us out. Someone helped us out with our logo. So I think when you're thinking about organizing your workplace, thinking about the skill sets of the people that you're organizing. And I do just want to shout out the merch shop. The merch shop is run by a union cooperative. It's called Works with an X. And we figured out how to basically get $5 from every item purchased goes to our mutual aid fund. And that mutual aid fund came in really handy. After layoffs, if anyone was VAT or cast and crew, those sort of like subterranean employees that Sesame had delegated, they did not get a severance. They just had a last day of work. We realized like there's a real need for mutual aid. There's a real need to develop an independent fund that's outside of OPEIU that's for workers. Again, that all was done with the support of someone who works on the development team. So getting people's strengths together really was a big part of that. And then also, we recognized that the attention given to the Sesame campaign was going to be outsized because of the brand that we're organizing. And so we wanted to be a model for other, I don't think that this was a conscious choice, but like we wanted to encourage other workers to take on their workplace, even if they're relatively happy there, just because anything could change at any time without your input. So being able to see a positive campaign, a caring campaign, one that really emphasizes what workers are doing together and for each other, we hope is an inspiration so that other people think, oh yeah, I work at a workplace. I could make that happen here too.
God, that leads right into what I wanted to talk to Grace about. Phoebe told us so many wonderful assets that they had in their campaign, the creatives, the branding, the money know-how, the internationally beloved company they're working for. And not every workplace has that. We got plenty of tech folks, we have plenty of creative folks, but Sesame, that was kind of a magical moment, right?
Right.
How can other nonprofits, other workers in Phoebe and her coworkers' former position, how can they systematize their union campaigns?
I love that question. I think we should all be asking that with regards to the Sesame Workers Union, especially because we can all recognize it. It is a tough thing. And I've worked with nonprofit organizations where the employees are very concerned about making sure that their organization maintains a good brand or a good image because they do important work. Like right now, we are working with the International Rescue Committee, who is in the middle of bargaining their contract nationwide because they represent over a dozen of the IRC shops. That is an organization that does super important work, especially in this moment, that protects immigrant and refugee rights. They also have really important people who work there who deserve worker rights. So that has been something that they have juggled there. I have juggled that same question on a number of other, particularly nonprofit organization campaigns where people have been pretty concerned about saying or doing anything as a union that would appear to be negative towards the organization's mission or goals, to threaten their funding, to threaten maybe their clients or their mission, whatnot. It is true, though, that management will also use that when they are trying to discourage a union campaign and will try to manipulate the workers to think that a union would actually take away from the work that they do or would take away from the resources that they have, which is simply not true. And what I always tell people is you got to want a union because you want to be able to stay in that organization. You want to make a career out of it. The reason you should be organizing your workplace is so that you can actually be at the table to negotiate for those resources or the support that you could actually use to do your job better. You shouldn't be organizing to try to take down your company and so it goes underwater so that there's no more of the mission that you're serving. That's particularly true with nonprofits. I think it's true with most companies. I mean, even if you work for a corporation or even if you work for a company that has some strong service that they're offering, but ultimately is a profit driver for someone, you probably do that job because you care about some part of the work that you're doing. I think that the best organizers on campaigns are ones that really care about staying at that company and want to retire there, who want other people to have a good chance of actually staying there, who aren't just trying to leapfrog into the next job. So the way you can actually leverage that and maybe to systematize it or whatever we want to call it is to find those good parts of the job that you really care about. The things that Phoebe listed of like, we have some amazing graphic designers, we have some amazing developers. You can tap into those talents and actually figure out how can we actually use our skills to build an organization within our workplace that works for us and that works for us better than the boss can, because the boss is not on our side right now. Building a union is all about building a democratic organization within your workplace. It's about building fairness within a structure that is otherwise pretty unfair. And the way we can do that is making sure that we are coming together to talk about, like, what is the organization that we actually want to work for look like? What is it that we like about our jobs, which is a question I ask workers all the time when I'm starting out conversations, because I want to know what is it that we actually want to bring out and strengthen through the organizing process and actually protect so that it doesn't go away, while also having the power to actually have a say in something that needs to change, that you're not actually getting your voice heard on. And I think that's where, like, we need to harness all those different skills that you mentioned to build that sort of campaign.
Yeah, I think similar to IRC, Sesame has very loyal workforce, right? Like, we are fans. We are people who care about this thing that we make. And so there was and is a lot of hesitancy about speaking to the press, about engaging in things that can be seen as being negative towards Sesame. And I would pretty often and consistently have to remind workers, we're not making up the things that they're doing. They're simply doing them, and we are reporting them. We went public with our union less than an hour later. They told us we're all getting laid off. Right after that, they laid off everyone who was on the public organizing committee, basically. You know, they tried to cancel our democratic election through the NLRB twice. On the day of the election, they threw out a bunch of ballots. They basically contested as many ballots as they could. We have not really put that on social media that clearly and that out loud. And part of that is because we, I think, are potentially overprotective of the brand because we're concerned about getting more funding. Like, I think that exactly what Grace was saying, we're seeing on the Sesame campaign, absolutely. We're also seeing that it's been over 50 days since we've had another bargaining session. So there is a relationship between how hard workers are willing to push, how much they're willing to escalate, how public they're going to be, not just to badmouth the company, but to be really clear that the company is being shitty. And we don't need to say that they're being shitty. We can just say the facts. If that is damaging to the brand, that is not your responsibility. You are not responsible for the bad behavior that management is putting out.
Can I also say something with regards to like this whole question? Because this is something we hear all the time on all sorts of industry-wide campaigns, or an example of a campaign where there's pretty clearly a company that is actually owned by capital, but also services a community that really needs support, is this one that I'm working on to organize sign language interpreters who work in call centers. There's one company that we're organizing that's nationwide. There's another one that's pretty global. They both are owned by outside firms that have a ton of money and have footholds in other industries. No one at any of these companies is under the illusion that this is like some small mom and pop nonprofit shop with limited funds, right? So every day their work is to answer calls from deaf or hard of hearing people who are trying to reach a hearing person or vice versa. And the interpreters are caught in this really difficult position where a lot of them know that they're being screwed over, but they also know that the deaf and hard of hearing people are getting it worse. And there's this really big tension where people are nervous to speak out about their compensation or about the conditions, when really what they're there for is to service a group of people who are being severely discriminated against. The way we have been addressing that is by making sure that we are bringing in a deaf committee to actually work with us and to be part of the campaign, because much like we should be organizing to make a stronger job for us and for our coworkers and a job where we could stay in this career, we are also organizing so that we can provide a better service. But that can only happen if we are in conversation and seeing the clients and the people that we're working with and serving as part of the same campaign and all united against this larger capital structure.
So we have an educator and organizer. It's not really a wonderful time to be either of those things, but the labor movement continues to maybe not flourish, but we still out here, right? So what is it that's giving you that energy and that hope now for the future of labor, for the work you're doing? What is keeping you each going?
I do ask myself that question of what's keeping us going, because I do find that I'm struggling a bit sometimes. I have been pretty shocked by how many people are hitting the streets right now that I had never seen engaged before. And it's not to say that we are suddenly launching a revolution, but I have been inspired by the continued politicization of friends, coworkers, family members who I thought otherwise would want to remain out of this. Or like my dad, for example, went to his first ever protest earlier this year. And I never thought in my life that that would happen. I think that's happening because people are actually willing to learn and to understand and like see that things are changing and that this is actually affecting all of our lives in every way. And I think it's pretty undeniable. So I guess like the thing that gives me hope is that people are smart and people are going to want to get together and hit the streets when that happens. But we're going to have to lean on the existing movement structures to continue to make that happen.
I love that answer, Grace. That's a great answer. I think that organizing a union was the coolest fucking thing I've ever done at work. By far. Like, people talk about how hard it is and like, oh, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of spreadsheets. It's a lot of like, it is so fun. It's like you get to actually physically show up and stand with people together. When do you get to do that? When do you get a group of people who spend most of their waking time together or on calls together or in this work environment where we all spend so much of our time, to have conversations that transition from, hey, how's your weekend, to, hey, I know that work conflicted with your kid's baseball game. How did that go? Like, did you make it in time? And I think that in a time when a lot of us, I guess, nationally are struggling to like make connections or have meaningful conversations with each other, organizing a union is a fantastic way to do that. You get to know people so fast and you get to really develop an understanding, even when people disagree, like an understanding of like who they are, where they're coming from, why it is they feel this way, and how you can like continue to talk to them. The act of, unionizing, it's really an act of care. And I think that that's something we all need more of and feels good to give.
I don't want to be too cynical, but that was such a Sesame Street way to end things. So I'm just like, oh, that was so nice. That's what I wanted to hear right now, too.
I'm glad I can be here in this time of need.
You truly is for union. Thanks for listening to Unite and Win, a guide to workplace organizing from the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee and Haymarket Books. Visit haymarketbooks.org to find indispensable radical books, podcasts, virtual events, and other political education resources, including the Unite and Win handbook. Please also consider joining the Haymarket Book Club. It's one of the best ways to support Haymarket and help fund projects like this one. I'm your host, Kim Kelly. Julia Yort is our senior producer, and Rachel Leitner is our engineer. Production support comes from Daphna Tier and Megan Swoboda. Music from Epidemic Sound. Listen to Unite and Win, a guide to workplace organizing, wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you heard, Show us some love by subscribing, rating, or reviewing our series. 5 stars, please. It would also be pretty cool of you to share it with a friend, a coworker, or a fellow troublemaker who just might benefit from a little inspiration. Solidarity forever and lots of love. Your pal, Kim.
The Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee supports any worker, anywhere in the country, in any sector, organizing for something better. Visit us at workerorganizing.org if you're ready to organize your workplace or volunteer with us. Please also consider making a donation in support of our work at workerorganizing.org/donate.